So, hello everyone, welcome to Positron Academy. So, today the topic of discussion is on the basic physics for nuclear medicine. So, in this set of presentation, we'll discuss about the atomic and nuclear structure, about radioactive decay, and on the subsequent presentation, we'll discuss in detail about the radioactive decay equations, the units of radioactivity, interactions of radiation with matter, and counting statistics. So now let us start with our presentation. So all of us are well known about the atomic and nuclear structure, and all of us know about what atoms are. Atoms are the basic components of matter, and it's composed of a positively charged nucleus at the center, and electrons are circulating in orbits around the nucleus. And this nucleus is composed of protons and neutrons. The proton is positively charged and neutron is chargeless. And because of the presence of proton, the nucleus is positively charged. The electrons, which keep on rotating around the nucleus in circular orbits, are being designated as the K shell, the L shell, M shell, and so on and so forth. Now the next question is how an atom is being characterized. An atom is being characterized by a defined specified number of protons, neutrons, and the mass number A. So if an atom has a specified number of protons, neutrons, and a mass number, then we call it as a nuclide. And how do you denote it? We denote is the X is the element name, Z is the proton number, N is the number of neutrons it has, and A is the atomic mass number of the given element or the given nucleate. If you look at this graph over here, so it's a plot between the number of neutrons and the number of protons. And this line over here is the line when the number of protons and number of neutrons are equal. That is, it's a line of n by z equals to 1. So these in black are those nucleides which are the stable nucleides. Stable means they don't decay to a daughter nucleate because they themselves are so stable. But along with the stable nucleides, we see lot of nucleides like in this way, in this set of nucleides in orange color. So these are the nucleides which are not stable. And why these nucleides are not stable? Because they don't have a given n by z ratio. Fine. So this group of nucleides have more protons, and that's why those nucleides are unstable. So what they do basically to get to a stable state, they keep on converting protons to neutrons, and along this conversion a positron is being released. That's why this group of nucleides decay through positron decay. The same goes for this group of nucleides which are unstable because they have no more number of neutrons and they decay through the beta decay. And this group of nucleides decay through alpha decay and so on and so forth. So in this graph we can see the different type of decay possible. Fine. Now let us move towards radioactive decay. So as I have already mentioned that the radionuclides are unstable. So if they are unstable, what is their basic motto? Their main motto is to get to a stable state. And how do they get to a stable state? So the process by which they get to a stable state is to decay by emitting particulate radiation or electromagnetic radiations or by spontaneous fission. And which process the radionuclides will be decaying depends on the composition of the nucleus. Fine. Like in this case, so this set of nucleides are decaying through the positron decay. Why? Because this set of nucleides have more protons than neutrons. That's why they were decaying through positron decay. Fine. So which decay process it has to go through, whether it will decay through alpha decay, beta decay, gamma decay, X-ray radiation. So decay process depends on how your nucleus is being composed of. Now this decay process can be in a single step or through several successive multi-step until it reaches the stability. For example, there is a nuclide over here which is unstable. So it can get to a stable state by a single step, or can get to the stable state through subsequent step, through beta minus over here, then 1 gamma, 1 gamma. So these can be a series of steps to get to a stable state, or a single step to get to a stable state. So this decay process can be a single step or multi-step until it reaches the stability. And third point is that, as I've told before, the N/Z ratio of the nucleate predicts the stability of the nucleate. Fine. So, and this radioactive decay, it occurs, why it occurs? To achieve the stability of the nucleus. And how it does? Basically, it does by altering the number of proton or neutron number. That's the basic funda behind it, to change the proton and neutron number and optimize in such a way the nucleus become more stable. Fine. So the first decay process which we are going to study is on a simple one, which is an alpha decay. So this alpha decay occurs when the stronger nuclear force cannot hold a large nucleus together, and this decay occurs in those nucleus which have more number of protons or which have higher atomic number. As you can see in this graph, that these are the nuclide which are decaying through the alpha decay process. So they are being occurring in with higher number of protons, fine, or higher atomic number. So in this case, and this nucleus, if we consider this nuclide, so this has so much strong nuclear force so that the nucleus cannot be held together. As a result of which, what it want to do, because of the presence of strong nuclear force, it has made the nucleus unstable. So what it does basically, it tried to convert this unstable species to a stable one. And how do it get to a stable state? By emitting 2 protons and 2 neutrons, that is by emitting a helium atom. And the daughter nuclide thus formed because of this process is more stable than this one. Fine. So as you can see, the parent was N, is the name of the nucleate, Z is the number of protons, and A is the atomic mass. And because that it has liberated or released 2 protons and 2 neutrons, we can see that Z minus 2 because 2 protons have been liberated, and A minus 4 because 2 proton 2 neutron, it accounts for 4. Fine. So from the total atomic mass, 4 has to be subtracted. So this daughter nucleide is more stable than the other thing. Now if you go and calculate the mass of these parent and the mass of these daughter nucleide and the helium atom, you will see that the mass of the parent nucleide is still larger than the combined mass of the daughter nucleide and the helium atom. So that difference is called as the disintegration energy. Now after the decay process from these unstable nuclide to a stable one to a more stable nuclide by emitting a helium atom. So this helium atom which is released from this alpha decay process, it itself is a very stable species. Fine. So that's all about alpha decay. Now let us move towards beta decay process. So beta decay process occurs when a nucleus emits an electron, and these electrons are the high energy electron. So it's my atom over here, and this atom is a unstable atom. So what it does basically, it to get to a state of stability, it emits electron from the nucleus. Fine, and these electrons are high energy electron. And this beta decay process is of 2 different types, either a positron decay or a beta minus decay. So in this example, if you go and see the C14, this particular C14 has more neutrons, and because of the presence of more neutrons, it has made the nucleate unstable. So the first option is there to get to a state of stability. So what it does, it converts its neutron to a proton, and during it a high energy electron is being released along with anti-neutrino. Fine. And this electron is the electron that is being released. Fine. So as you can see, C14, so it has more neutrons, so it has converted one of its neutron to a proton. So proton has increased by 1 over here. So this N14 is the new daughter nucleate, which is more stable, and along with it a electron and a anti-neutrino is being released. Fine. And this electron that is being released over here, these electrons are not the atomic orbital electron. This electron is created because of the decay process. It's not related to the atomic electron. But now look at this representation over here. So decay diagram of boron 12. So boron 12 decays to C12 through many beta decays. And you can see the Q value for the process is 13.3693 mega electron volt. Like in case of other decay, like we have a high energy state and a lower energy state, and and something is being liberated, and like for example alpha particle is being liberated over here. So we'll get alpha particle of the given Q value. So if the Q value is approximately 4 MeV, then you will get a alpha particle which has an energy of 4 MeV. But you won't get a beta particle which has a defined energy of the Q value. Rather, you will get a spectrum of beta energies like this. So this is like plot between the relative number of electrons and the kinetic energy. So you will get a spectrum of energies. You won't get a beta particle which has the value equal to Q value. So if you go and see the beta particles which has a defined Q value, that number of electrons possessing Q value is very less or even tends to 0. So there must be something else to carry away the extra mass and energy. From there the concept of neutrino comes. So that neutrino is something is there which is trying to take away the extra mass and energy, and these neutrino are very difficult to detect. Fine. So this is the neutrino detector that is being present in Japan in Super Kamiokande, and these are all photo detectors over here to detect those neutrino. And though also the probability of detecting this neutrino is very poor, and that's why we have so much of detectors over here to detect the simplest neutrino if present. Now the next is on the beta decays. If you go and see the notable some beta decays, so you can see this molybdenum 99, and this is one of the most important radionuclides in nuclear medicine, because from molybdenum 99 we are getting 99M technetium, and this one is very important for use in nuclear medicine. So this you can, if you see this decay diagram of molybdenum 99, it decays in several steps to get to technetium 99M, which is the metastable state of the technetium. Fine. And after getting to a technetium metastable state, from this state it emits a gamma ray photon to get to the stable state of technetium. So technetium metastable decays to stable technetium by emitting a gamma ray photon, and this gamma ray is of the energy of 140 keV, and this gamma ray energy is being used for nuclear medicine part of view to reconstruct the medical images by means of gamma camera. And this technetium 99M is being used as a radionuclide for tagging to many of the substrates like technetium leveled MDP or any other radiopharmaceutical for getting medical images. Like in this case we are getting a bone scan over here with this is a bone scan of technetium 99M methylene diphosphonate. So this nuclide is very useful for medical part of view, medical imaging part of view. And how it came, so how we are getting this image, because of this decay from molybdenum 99 to technetium 99M. Fine. And this technetium-99m, which is in the metastable state, decays to technetium, which is more stable, by emitting a gamma ray photon, which is energy of 140 kilo electron volt. And this is the actual decay diagram, which is more complicated. But what we are interested in, this part, because from here the technetium metastable decays to technetium by emitting a gamma ray photon, which has an energy of 140 keV, as I mentioned before. So next is a very famous beta decay of C14 to N14, and it's a very simple process, a single beta decay to get to a N14 state. And we can see that C14 is very important for carbon dating, and it's single decay of beta decay to get to the ground state, and it has a half-life of 5730 years, and it's a very long year of half time. So, and these nuclide is being used for carbon dating, and the basic physics or basic science behind it is that all organisms are intaking and exhaling carbon by some means, like we are eating diet which has carbon sources, we are breathing and exhaling carbon dioxide, oxygen. So we are still in some equilibrium of intake and exchange, and that equilibrium we call as an isotropic equilibrium, in which we are taking carbon and you are exhaling carbon out. So we are, whenever, as long as you are alive, you are in an isotropic equilibrium. And also along with C12 you are also intaking C14 also. There is some significant amount of C14 in our body because of upper atmospheric because of the production of C14 from the upper atmosphere because of some cosmic ray phenomena. So that is C14 in our body. So, and these things are constantly in isotopic equilibrium. But the moment you die, you stop intaking carbon, and whatever C14 is left in your body start decaying naturally with a regular decay curve. And that's the basic of carbon decay. You determine how much it has decayed, and it will be helping you to tell you how much old the given dead body is, or to determine the age of the given specimen. And that's the basic science behind this carbon decay, to calculate how much counts you are getting from it, and so on and so forth. Now the next is about the positron decay, in which we have this nuclide over here, and this nuclide is again unstable because it has more number of protons. So what it does, it converts this proton to a neutron, and along with it a positron is being released and a neutrino. Sorry, yes, and a neutrino. So what it does, this neon has more protons. What it does, it converts this proton to a neutron. You can see neon has 10 protons, but it is unstable. So what it does, basically it converts this proton to a neutron, and this is more stable than this one, and along with it a positron and a neutrino is being released. And the energetics required for this process to happen is that Q value should be more than 1.022 MeV, and if the Q value is less than that, this process won't happen. This positron decay won't happen. But now the question is that one positron has a rest mass of 511 keV. Then why we need 1022 keV or 1.022 MeV? Why do we need double of the energy? The question is to conserve charge. So if the nucleus is releasing a positron which is positively charged, it should release something else to conserve charge. So at the same time, it releases or it shed one orbital electron. Why? To conserve charge. And that's why the Q value for this process to happen is more than 1.022 MeV. And if the energy is less than that, this process won't happen because conservation of charge can be maintained there. The last process is that is about the electron capture, in which the nucleus of the atom captures an orbital electron and lead to a stable state and releases a neutrino. And finally we have gamma decay process, and these gamma decays are nothing but these are the high energy photons being released, and these gamma rays are released from excited nuclei like this one. So this nuclide is an excited state. So when this nuclide comes to its ground state, that is C12, so the C12 state is the excited state of the nuclide. So when it comes to its ground state, it emits a gamma ray photon. Fine. So by emitting gamma ray photon, it comes to a ground state. So gamma rays are nothing but these are high energy photons, and they are emitted when a nucleate decays from an excited state to a lower state, as I've told before. And this is the generalized decay diagram over here. So that's the unstable nuclide which can decay by several means. It can decay through alpha decay to get to a stable state, and you can see in alpha decay the atomic number decreases by 2. Obviously these will be shifted towards left. Fine. And these are electron captured beta, how it will look like. So main aim is to get to a stable state. So whatever nucleides it has reached after decay or post decay, so it all of them has attained a state of more stable nucleate, and that's the basic rule behind the decay process to get to a state of stability. And if you see over here, that's the neutron emission, and this is rarely seen basically. For example, helium-10, it's a helium atom, as a helium atom which has a 10 atomic mass number, and this is extremely unstable. So what it does is it immediately releases 2 neutrons to get to a stable state of helium-8, but still it's unstable, so it keep on subsequently decaying further and get to a stable state. So that's something we call as we call it neutron emission. So these helium-10 keep on emitting neutron to get to a stable daughter nucleate. Fine. And gamma decay we have already discussed in the previous slides. And that's about potassium 40. And potassium 40 actually goes through a lot of decay process. We can see that it has gone through a positron decay, then gamma decay, gamma transition is there, electron capture is there, beta decay is there. So there is a lot of decay process over here. So these K40 decays through many decay process, which is not seen by other nucleides. They will either decay through by any 2 or 3 means, but it is going through a all round of decay process. So that's all about radionuclide or radioactive decay processes. I have explained you about different decay process, alpha decay, beta decay. I have also explained you a lot about the same, and gamma decay also. So thank you for watching my video, and please stay tuned, and in the subsequent presentations the rest of the topic will be covered.